Imagine receiving a late-night call that changes everything in an instant. It's September 7th, 2012, in the college town of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. A 20-year-old university student is found brutally murdered inside her own off-campus apartment. There are no signs of forced entry. Nothing of value appears to have been stolen. But lying near her body is a single handwritten note with a message that still sends chills down the spine of anyone who reads it. I'm not going to be ignored. This is the tragic story of Faith Hedgepeth, a bright, ambitious young woman whose life was cut short in one of North Carolina's most haunting unsolved murder cases, until a shocking breakthrough 9 years later finally brought an arrest. Even today, in 2026, with the suspect awaiting trial, many questions remain unanswered. Faith Hedgepeth was only 20 years old when she died. She was a biology major at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, one of the top public universities in the country. She had big dreams of becoming a doctor or a medical researcher and was known by everyone who knew her as someone who was always positive, hardworking, full of energy, and incredibly kind. Friends and family described her as the kind of person who lit up any room she walked into and was always willing to lend a helping hand. Faith had recently moved away from home to pursue her education. Like so many college students, she was learning how to balance heavy coursework, building new friendships, and enjoying her newfound independence. She had only been living with her roommate, Karina Rosario, for a short time in their off-campus apartment at the Hawthorne at the View complex. On the evening of Thursday, September 6th, 2012, Faith and Karina had gone out to a local nightclub called The Thrill. They returned home around 7:30 p.m. The night seemed completely ordinary. But sometime in the early morning hours of Friday, September 7th, everything changed. Around 4:25 a.m., Karina left the apartment. She told police later that she believed Faith was asleep in her bedroom and that she had left the door unlocked. A few text messages were sent from Faith's phone around that time, one to a friend saying something along the lines of, "Hey B, can you come over here please? Rosario needs you more, aha." 3 minutes later, another text corrected the previous message. Those would be the last known outgoing messages from Faith's phone. When Karina returned to the apartment around 11 a.m. the next morning, she walked into a scene of pure horror. Faith was lying on the floor. She had been brutally attacked and murdered. The apartment showed obvious signs of a violent struggle, furniture overturned, items scattered, clear evidence of fighting. Yet strangely, there was no forced entry. The doors and windows were not broken. Nothing valuable seemed to have been taken. The most disturbing discovery came when police examined the scene more closely. Near Faith's body was a handwritten note on a torn piece of paper. Written in hurried handwriting were the chilling words, "I'm not going to be ignored." Investigators immediately understood this was not a random burglary or opportunistic crime. This murder felt deeply personal, as if the killer had a specific message or grudge directed at Faith herself. Evidence of semen and male DNA was found at the scene. She had also been beaten over the head with a blunt object, later determined to be an empty bottle of rum. The investigation launched quickly, but became incredibly frustrating. Early suspicion fell heavily on Karina's ex-boyfriend. He had reportedly been sending disturbing messages and acting erratically in the days leading up to the murder. Police questioned him intensely, and for years many in the true crime community considered him the prime suspect. However, despite extensive questioning, he was never charged. His DNA did not match the evidence left at the scene. Forensic teams collected DNA from the apartment, but it did not produce a full match with any known suspect in the database at the time. Over the next several years, the case was revisited multiple times. Investigators used newer and more advanced DNA technology. Hundreds of people were interviewed. Phone records, text messages, digital footprints, and alibis were carefully analyzed. The cryptic note remained one of the most haunting and puzzling elements of the entire case. Was it written by the killer as a taunt? Was it a final message meant for Faith? Or was it deliberately left to mislead the police? For 9 long years the case remained cold. Faith's family continued to plead for justice. The community never forgot. Then, In August 2021, a breakthrough finally came. A man named Miguel Enrique Salguero Olivares was arrested for a DWI in Raleigh. When his DNA was entered into the system, it matched the unknown male DNA found on Faith's body and at the crime scene. His palm print also matched a print left on a glass bottle at the scene. In September 2021, 9 years after the murder, Miguel Enrique Salguero Olivares was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, burglary, rape, and sexual offense. He was not someone who had been on the radar in the early years of the investigation. The arrest brought a wave of relief to many, but also new questions. As of 2026, Salguero Olivares is still awaiting trial. Defense attorneys have filed motions questioning certain aspects of the evidence and even requesting to call additional witnesses, including possibly the roommate. Over the years, several theories have been discussed by investigators and the true crime community. Some believe the killer was someone Faith knew personally, perhaps a stalker, a rejected acquaintance, or someone who felt ignored by her. Others think the note was a deliberate misdirection planted by the real perpetrator to confuse the investigation. Still others have suggested connections to someone in her wider social circle driven by jealousy, a personal grudge, or emotional issues. Even with modern forensic tools and an arrest now made, many details of that night remain unclear. The case continues to fascinate and haunt people because it shows how quickly a normal college night can turn tragic and how long justice can sometimes take. More than 13 years later, Faith Hedgepeth's murder is no longer unsolved, but the full story is still being told in court. Her family still waits for complete closure and justice, while investigators and the public continue to follow every new development as the case heads toward trial. What do you think really happened that night in that quiet apartment? Was the note the key to unlocking this mystery, or just another heartbreaking piece of a puzzle that took nearly a decade to begin solving? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I do read every single one. If you enjoy deep, well-told true crime stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. New videos drop every week on shadows and timelines. The shadows are full of secrets, and we're just getting started.